Welcome to Doctrine and Devotion, a podcast exploring Christian faith and practice from a Reformed Baptist perspective. My name is Joe Thorne. I'm the lead pastor of Redeemer Fellowship in St. Charles, Illinois.
And I'm Jimmy Fowler, executive pastor at Redeemer Fellowship.
Ooh,
oh, man.
It's been a long time.
Man, we have not recorded in how many weeks?
It's been like 2 months.
No, it's not.
It's been 2 months.
It has not been 2 months.
It's been
Stop
2 months. I was gone for like a month.
You were not.
And
You
then-
were gone for 2 weeks.
Well, whatever. It's all the same.
You were gone for, actually, you might be right. It might be closer to a month than I realized.
Yeah.
Because you were gone for a week and a half. Then I was gone for a week. So about 2.5, 3 weeks, yeah.
And we recorded a bunch in advance.
Yep.
So, man.
And those are now gone.
Yeah, we got to record this and drop it in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So
We could do it. We could do it.
You know,
if those other suckers could do it, we could do it.
Yeah. And we're fueled by cigars, as everyone knows.
Well, we're powered by cigars.
Powered. The same thing.
No, it's not.
Why
powered.
not? What's the difference?
Because we trademarked that one. Powered by
Oh, that's
cigars.
right. Powered. Yeah, we're at the cigar shop back here again.
So,
and,
man, how was South Africa?
everybody knows it was fine. It was good. It was good.
Well, no, they haven't heard from you. Come on.
All right. South Africa was awesome.
And so what'd you do there? Like, just so that people...
Yeah.
Because you didn't really give us any info going in.
I know.
because you
People are
didn't
like,
pay
how
attention.
come you didn't...
Because you didn't pay attention at all.
First of all, it's not my job to promote. I just go. That's just what I do.
It is your job to
No,
promote.
I
It
don't
is your
promote.
job. It's at least your job to know what your schedule is. And you had no idea what your schedule
Yeah, I
was.
knew I was speaking like every day. And I knew basically what I was preaching on. So there you
All
go.
right, you didn't do your job. But
I did-
continue.
I did- I did a great job.
Now that you finally did it,
And you know what Trump said when he was
Stephen
asked-
Kopalchek finally.
Donald Trump was asked how he would grade himself on his presidency so far recently. What do you think he gave himself? It was a grade.
It was a grade.
Now you have to. Now, what would Donald Trump give himself as a grade?
As a grade?
First year and a half as president. What grade does he give himself?
Yeah, he probably gave himself 12.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense.
That's right, because it's Trump.
No.
You told him a grade, and he'll give you a 12.
He gave himself a letter grade. What did he give himself?
A+.
Yep, exactly.
Like, of course he gave himself.
It's just
an
so
A+.
funny. No, but it's like, listen, if I thought I did really good, I would say A+. Like A+ is like that's not even a thing. Come on, like
No, I'm not asking how you did. I know.
yeah,
how
no,
you
I
did.
know. I'm just saying it's funny. Well, I was gonna say I'd give myself an A+. This is what I was gonna say.
Would you really?
No, of course
I
not.
was gonna say, that doesn't-
So,
I
yeah,
heard from
we-
Kopalchek. No, you should not be giving yourself an A+.
So there's a Christian bookstore there, large Christian bookstore, Coombe Books, Christian art, and
Some new age. Some
no. So basically they had me come in, and I wound up preaching. I think I preached 11 or 12 times, and it was great.
And you went on TBN.
I went on TBN.
But
TBN South Africa, TBN Africa is what it is. Yeah.
No, I've watched TBN Africa.
Yeah.
It's just as bad here.
Well, no.
as
The
it is
difference
here.
is they actually have on guys like Piper and stuff as well.
Okay.
So they have the same stuff, but they have more stuff.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
they add good.
Oh, okay.
To
Now,
mix
is
it up.
it good Piper from when he was younger, or good Piper when he's tweeting now?
No, it's not. It's not. It's not present Piper.
Yeah, it's not
maybe it is. I don't know. I don't watch TV. No, it was great, man. I preached at. So I basically I was able to do talks.
I know I said I brought this for
preaching.
you, but the coffee I have is horrible.
Great. So Jimmy bought me an iced coffee from
But you
Dunkin'
already
Donuts,
got one, so-
and he's drinking it now in front of me. He just took the straw. He's throwing it away.
Drink this coffee. It's
I'm not
horrible.
drinking your at-home coffee.
No.
Your Folgers.
It's
hey,
not Folgers.
thanks, Michelle.
But it was
yeah.
Michelle
Oh,
that
of course
made
it was. Yeah, Canadians and their coffee. Boy, they're known for their coffee. The coffee game in Canada, man. They got it going on. Anyways, nobody cares. It was really good. I was really blessed. I mean, great connections with the Crossway people, of
Yep,
course.
That's good.
And
now you also made connections with the local law enforcement. We saw on Instagram.
what?
We saw on Instagram.
I
You posted a
don't
photo of
remember
you
that.
in the police station. Are you saying that's not
Oh,
true?
yeah, no, I did. Yeah. Well, I do wind up in the police station
Okay,
from time
so
to time.
so what?
It doesn't matter. We really got to get going. We don't
why
have
were
a
you
lot
in
of
the police
time
station,
today.
Joe?
Because
Why were you in there?
I was a witness to a crime, and
What'd you see? Oh, I guess you can't really talk about it because you get.
Yeah,
Do
no,
you have to go back for?
no, it's over. It's all wrapped
So
up.
really,
But
like,
now I can say I witnessed the disappearance of my passport while I was in South Africa.
How about instead of witness, you experienced the
I
disappearance? of your
lost
passport?
my passport.
How does that happen?
You
You big dummy.
no, I listen.
How does that happen?
I called Jimmy and I'm like, dude, I lost my passport, and I was like, I didn't want to tell you because I know you're gonna make fun of me, and you were like, dude, I would never make fun of you. This is serious stuff, man. Like, oh my gosh, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, man, thanks for not making fun of me. He's like, yeah, man. You dummy! 5 minutes of Jimmy blasting me for losing my passport.
Come on, who does that? How do you lose your passport?
Somebody probably stole it because they stole some money.
No, but then
too.
how?
Money,
okay,
like,
maybe
there was
then.
stuff.
All right, that's probably
I didn't mention any of that when I was on the trip. I didn't want people going,
Oh,
yeah.
but now you want them to
I
know.
would rather no. Now I just don't care. But at the time, I would rather them yell at me for being dumb than go, "Oh, you lost. Somebody took your stuff." So, anyways, yeah, I lost my passport. I had
You
to
at
get
least made
emergency
photocopies for like when you go in to get.
I had photos of my
Okay,
passport.
good. So
yes.
yeah, you always do that. Good, good.
Yeah,
You want to make
photos.
sure you didn't
On my
miss
passport.
that.
I mean, I didn't have them, but
So-
but the publisher did, and so they so they,
Kapalchek was your babysitter.
Kapalchik, yes, he's my
He
Manny.
was-
He is my
your
Manny. Love those guys, man. Those guys were awesome. The cool thing about the guys at Crossway, like we spent a lot of time together traveling, in-country flights and hotels and all that, and they let me roll with them like everywhere and hang out, and it was really cool because they're professional, cool guys, and then I'm me.
And this is
yeah,
Joe.
yeah,
Yeah, Joe.
and they were cool with it. So we had a really good time.
Good.
It was awesome.
Well, Joe, what are we going to talk about today? Now that we're finally back, back into the 1689
Yeah, well, we're finally going to hit something that we've never talked about before.
ever.
The doctrine of providence. Chapter 5 is what we're in. Chapter 5. We're going to do paragraphs 1 and 2. And I'm pretty sure I'm hopefully he'll show up, but I'm pretty sure Thomas Watson's going to stop by today while we're
most
recording.
likely.
So
Most likely he will.
he might have some things to say. We love us some Watson. So chapter 5, paragraph 1. Jimmy, you want to read paragraph 1?
Yep. All right. Paragraph 1. God, the good creator of all things, in his infinite power and wisdom, does uphold, direct, dispose, and govern all creatures and things, from the greatest even to the least, by his most wise and holy providence, to the end for the which they were created.
Not for the witch.
Yeah, for the which they were created. To the end. Wait, stop. To the end for the which they were created, according unto his infallible foreknowledge and the free and immutable counsel of his own will, to the praise of the glory of his wisdom, power, justice, infinite goodness, and mercy.
It's great. I thought I could trip you up. Paragraph 2. Although in relation to the foreknowledge and decree of God, the first cause, all things come to pass immutably and infallibly, so that there is not anything that befalls any by chance or without his providence, yet by the same providence he ordered them to fall out according to the nature of second causes, either necessarily, freely, or contingently. All right, this is good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it winds up hitting on a lot of issues, doctrines, controversies, and it implies some really practical things for us to consider for our everyday lives.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about providence, I mean, we're talking about something that is a sticking point among, believers, right? What is the extent of God's providence, and what's the impact of God's providence in the life of the believer?
Right. And so we should probably start by explaining, what is providence? I mean, how do we talk about it in our own lives, in our own ministry? If you have to explain to somebody what providence is, Jimmy, what do you say?
Well, providence, I would talk about that it's God's hand, I think, in the life of the believer.
I like that.
God's the 1689 talks about ordering, right? So it's like it's intentional. There's an intentionality there. There's a plan. It's the sovereign plan of God in the life of the believer, and God brings it about by his means.
Yeah, that's good. I like how you said it's God's hand in the life of the believer. Of course, it's not just in the life of the believer, as the 1689 says, of course. It's God's hand in all things,
creations,
right? So, yeah, I think about it, the 1689 talks about order. I've usually talked about it in terms of governing, as other theologians have. God governs all things. He's involved in all things. I had a friend that used to say a lot that God is a God of details. His name was Nathan. I went to Moody with him. He was my roommate for a while. And he would just say, I love that God is a God of detail, that like the small parts of my life are not only not beyond his reach, but they are a part of the outworking of his plan. And so when I think about providence, I would say it's God's active involvement in every detail of our lives and the created order.
Oh, I love that. We talked to hey, you know what? Oh, come on in.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to show.
He did show.
Yeah,
there he is. Come
Tommy!
on, Tommy. Oh, here's Tommy. Thomas Watson says, "Providence is God's ordering all outcomes."
Wait. This is so good. You got to read it without me laughing over it.
All right, ready? Providence is God's order. Okay. Providence is God's ordering all outcomes and events of things after the counsel of his will to his own glory.
Boom.
Boom. I call providence God's ordering things to distinguish it from his decrees. God's decree ordains things that shall happen. God's providence orders them.
Yeah, that's
so there's
great.
that distinction between the two, between the decree of God, which we talked about,
Right.
and the providence of God, which we're speaking of now.
He's actively involved in all of the outworkings of the decree in our everyday, every minute existence.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's helpful. And I know some people they have a problem with providence.
Well, who would be some people? What do you mean, some people?
Yeah, I don't know, man. What's his name? Blatant Showers?
Oh my
What's his name? I forget.
No.
Blatant Showers.
No, don't.
No, it's Blatant Showers.
No. He's not. He's
Should
not
I not
gonna-
call him out?
No, you could call him out.
Oh, okay.
But don't.
Blatant.
No, but you can't. No,
I don't understand.
He's not BJ Smalls.
No, obviously
exactly.
Tijuana is his own person.
Exactly. So don't conflate
No,
the two.
I'm not.
Don't conflate the two.
I'm not conflating
by
them.
putting them on the same level.
How am I putting them? No, wait, listen. Let me.
Dr. Leighton Flowers has.
Oh,
an issue
Leighton.
with
I'm
this.
sorry.
Yes.
We actually like Leighton.
Exactly,
There's
which is
part of the
why-
difference, and he's a believer.
Yeah.
He actually does know and love Jesus. And Tijuana, I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'll just be honest.
Like Tijuana, we'll go ahead and keep going down that road.
I'm just joking around, Leighton. I don't think you're listening, but if you are,
But he is.
I'm joking, right?
Yeah, and we all know you are.
So I know, like now, of course, Dr. Leighton.
Hashtag Flowers listens to Fofo.
to Fofo.
Yep.
Who listens to me, Blatant? Of course, Dr. Flowers believes in the doctrine of providence. It's a biblical concept. He's going to affirm providence, but he's going to have a very different position on what that is,
The
in
scope
details,
of it, yeah.
than we would. But here are some things that stick out in paragraphs 1 and 2 as it relates to the doctrine of providence, right?
Yeah.
In light of this definition, right, God's ordering of all of these things, the 1689 points out that because the doctrine of providence is true, it means there is no such thing as chance,
Yep.
and there is no such thing as blind determinism.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're talking about chance, like what do people mean when they say like, oh, this was just a chance?
Like it was just a random occurrence. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Right.
It's just I think another way, it's a coincidence.
Right. It's like, I would say, like, yeah, I like that. It ranges in your perspective, right? Some people would call it coincidence. Other people might call it chaos, right?
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
And but chaos is a myth because it might look that way to you, it might feel that way to you, but the doctrine of providence says that no, chaos is a myth. God has a purpose. God has a plan and an order to all of the events that are happening.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, as a believer, we fundamentally know this from creation, right? Like that God put order. He subdued chaos and ordered all things.
Right out of Genesis. So we have a God who reigns, who rules, and who orders. And we're going to talk about but you should already begin to sense like this doctrine has direct impact on the state of our soul in the midst of trouble and chaos.
Yeah.
So we're going to come back to that, but just hang on to that. So there's no such thing as chance. Mm-hmm. But there's also no such thing as blind determinism, and this is important because when we start talking about the doctrine of providence and Reformed Baptist theology, a lot of people will accuse us of this sort of a thing as if all things are happening in an orderly, mechanistic fashion in such a way that we are puppets, we are or robots. We are simply programmed to do what we're going to do.
Yeah.
We don't have a will, and everything is compulsory. The perspective in Reformed theology is that while God is sovereign over all things, orders all things, that we are still rational creatures who act freely in accordance with our natures.
Absolutely.
And so we've talked about this a lot. We keep coming back to this because people do bring it up, and I understand.
I understand the struggle with it.
Totally. I mean, and I get like some people might want to say, well, listen, I don't see how you can say that we have any kind of will that is free in any way. I don't see how you can not conclude that everything is this hard determinism, and we don't, we don't have any choices, and anything that we do, how can you say that it isn't ultimately from God? I mean, it's almost as if they look at the simple statement that God orders all things in accordance with his decree, and they say they don't see any other way than to go with, okay, so doesn't matter what we do, it's all going to be a part of the plan. But the full biblical picture is this both and, that God is fully sovereign over all things. He providentially cares for all things.
Yes.
He has his decree and he has his providence, and yet with that, in that, we're not eliminating second causes. We are not eliminating the reality that what we do, we want to do, and we make real choices that that are not coerced out of us by some outside force.
Yeah.
So there's mystery there. We always embrace the mystery, but there's a difference between blind determinism and God's sovereign determinism, his holy and righteous determinism that allows us to work within accord to our natures and do the things that we want to do.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, along those lines, I think one of the things that people keep bringing up, and I know Dr. Flowers has mentioned in the past, then is if God is sovereign and if God has decreed, or if God is God in his providence, like, and he's ordering all these things, does that then not mean that he is the author, or he's responsible for evil then?
Yeah, and we keep coming back to this because it is a big question. It's a question that psalmists will ask to God himself or the prophets, and God has answers. Paul deals with this sort of a thing in Romans 9 about God's sovereignty and our responsibility.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things I think that we need to keep in mind. The easier thing to do for me would be to just read Thomas Watson, because what he says here is, well, he's going to say it better than I do, but just listen to what he says and try to understand, even if you don't agree, try to understand this perspective. Watson says, but some may say, if God has a hand in ordering all things that fall out, then he has a hand in the sins of men. I answer, no, by no means. He has no hand in any man's sin. God cannot go contrary to his own nature. He cannot do any unholy action, any more than the sun can be said to be darkened. Here you must take heed of two things. One, you must take heed of making God ignorant of men's sins, and two, you must take heed of making God to have a hand in men's sins. Is it likely that God is both the author of sin and the avenger of sin? Is it a likely thing that God should make a law against sin and then have a hand in breaking his own law? God in his providence permits men's sins. Quote, he allowed all nations to walk in their own ways, from Acts 14:16. God permitted their sin, which he never would if he could not bring good out of it. Hear that. The only reason that God permits sins is because he can bring good out of it. He would not permit sins if he could not bring good out of it. So the permission, this permissive decree to allow men to do what they want, falls under God's sovereign plan without him being the one to actually bring it about. Had not sin been permitted, God's justice in punishing sin and his mercy in pardoning sin had not been so well manifested. The Lord is pleased to permit sin, but he has no hand in sin. That's a really helpful way for me to think about it, that if God is not absolutely sovereign, if the doctrine of providence, as it is articulated in the 1689, is not true, then how is it possible that God can cause all things to work together for the good of those who love him?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think it is. So the doctrine of providence ought to be seen as, I'm going to go back to what Jimmy said, God's hand in the lives of his people, God's hand in the works of the world and creation, but not in the sense of, the way that people are suggesting when Thomas is answering this question.
Yeah.
God doesn't have a hand in their sins as if he's bringing it about himself, but his hand is allowing them to do what they want to do and then holding them responsible for it. And here's his hand really manifested. I'm going to bring good out of the evil actions of wicked men.
And not just good, Joe. I mean, there's a purpose behind it, right?
Right.
Like it's not just flippant. I guess that's what's important to me here, is that when we're talking about God's decree and God's providence, and that it's God's hand in creation, there's a purpose behind it. And I think we struggle I don't know if we struggle with it. I think we struggle with knowing what the purpose is.
Right. Or maybe seeing the purpose.
Or maybe seeing the purpose.
We can't see
exactly.
it.
We struggle with seeing the purpose. I mean, but the 16:9 right here tells us in chapter 5, paragraph 1, what is the purpose of providence? To the praise of the glory of his wisdom, power, justice, infinite goodness, and mercy.
Right.
It's all about the glory of God himself. It reveals the goodness and love and mercy of God.
But I get the problem, right? Because we don't always see the purpose, right? Where do we see, how is God's wisdom, power, justice, infinite goodness, and mercy seen in his providence when bad guys do bad
Horrible
things, right? And so we don't always see it right now. We will ultimately one day see it very clearly.
Yeah.
But for now we don't. When I was out at South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So Stephen Kopalchik, he's a member of our church. His family, him and his wife are members, and they got like 10 kids or something.
12.
And is it 12? Yeah, 12 teen. 12
teen
kids.
That's
they so great people. I mean, goodness sakes, they're godly, awesome, spiritually minded people. And so Elias, my son, and my daughter Madeline hang out with their kids, and they do a lot of stuff together. Well, of course, Elias likes to watch movies that would be considered probably a little more scary.
Oh, give us an example.
I'm just
give
saying.
Us an example.
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
It?
But that would be one. Yeah, okay. Sure. Okay, so you can think of one off the top of your head. So my kid some of my kids like horror movies, and some of the Kopalchik's kids like horror movies. But Stephen was like, "Hey man, why don't you walk me through some of your thinking about horror movies and whether or not they're appropriate and all that?" So we had a good conversation on it, and obviously a lot of this depends on not only the content of the movie, but the maturity of your kid and the sensitivity
what
of
they
your kid.
can handle. Yeah.
And so this didn't come from Stephen, but I've had this posited to me before. Like, whoa. That movie shows evil satanic people, and in the end, they win and the good guys lose. How could you watch that? How could you watch, there's a movie recently that came out called, well, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I saw a movie recently, and it's definitely the main character winds up being taken over by the devil, and evil wins.
Yeah, the guy that's snaps his finger and half the universe is gone. Yes, I understand.
I have no idea what that is.
Continue. Yes,
That's
movie.
definitely not what it is.
It was Infinity War.
Okay,
yes.
No, I don't want.
Yes, I know. Evil
stuff.
won.
Okay.
Continue.
So I feel like, whoa. Or like the movie The Witch. In the end, evil wins and good loses. How can you watch that or endorse that? Because we know that evil doesn't win. Okay. Ultimately, evil doesn't win. But there are battles in which evil does win. And there are righteous people who suffer to death.
Yeah.
So yes, God will ultimately show in that his providence has worked for his glory and the good of his people, even though right now we might not see it.
Yeah.
And so, some stories that we might read or a movie that we might watch might depict one aspect of evil winning over good, but that is not the end. That is not the outcome. And so even in art, art reflects this, that we don't always see the glory of God in the immediate, but ultimately, in the end, the purpose of God's providence will be made known. And I think for us, this is where faith comes in, because we rely on what he has told us. Even when life feels chaotic, we rely on this promise that he will cause all these details of our lives to work out for the manifestation of his wisdom, power, justice, infinite goodness, and mercy, and we are the beneficiaries of that.
So, Joe, when we talk about the providence of God and this doctrine, this should move us, right? Like there should be some sort of response. And I know we've talked about this in kind of in three ways, whether it's confidence, conviction, conduct.
Right. The three ways that we always encourage people when you're looking at a doctrine, right? These are the three connection points to your life.
Exactly.
Right. So any doctrine that you are considering, how does it produce confidence in you before God and before the world? What conviction should it bring about in your heart? So think affections, and what conduct should it result in?
That's right. So I think when we think of confidence, I think for me, where's my confidence before God? Is that my confidence before God is that we have a loving Creator, a loving God, a sovereign God, that in his infinite goodness, mercy, wisdom, power, justice that he takes care of us, right?
Right.
And that these things that are going on in our lives, that whether we're going through trials or struggles, or whether we're going through seasons of good and abundance, or seasons of drought, that our sovereign God is still there.
Abundance or absence. You can get the alliteration going.
I'm
There
sorry.
You go.
Yes,
yeah.
I
You want
apologize.
abundance in the
Yeah, I know.
drought.
I'm not Baptist enough for you.
Okay, you got to get more Baptist.
Oh, okay.
I think that's great, man. I that's how I think about it too. Honestly, it is because life does feel chaotic, and I'll be honest. We talk about this from time to time that a lot of pastoral ministry is walking people through the valley of the shadow of death. It's walking people through suffering and darkness and pain. And so there is so much darkness in the world. The world is a dangerous place, regardless of where you live. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of affliction. And if you're merely looking at your circumstances, it's easy then to allow that to be the filter through which you understand God.
Yeah.
But like Psalm 73, the psalmist was tempted to do that there. But instead, what we need to do is take a step back and say, like, okay, my confidence here before the face of God and before the world is that he has providentially ordered the things that I am going through in a way that will result in his good. He will use human frailty, and he will use human wickedness ultimately for good, and even if we can't see it right now. So I'm with you 100%. My confidence is not in the ease of my circumstances, but
that's
in
good. That's a good way to put it.
The execution of God's providence.
Whoa.
You see the two E's? Got two E's in there.
Whoa, that was pretty good. So now, Joe, we're going to talk about an area that you struggle with now.
Height.
When we talk about this doctrine, what does it do in your heart? Like, how should you be feeling?
Why would I struggle with that?
Because you're cold-hearted.
I don't have a heart. That's part of the problem. So I was with Dane Ortland.
Name drop.
Yeah. Well, no, he was in South Africa, and he was at one point he looked at me and he goes, "Well, you don't have this problem because you don't have a heart, Joe. There's no heart in there." So I think that's a fair question to ask all of us, right? Mm-hmm. So what affection should this produce in somebody who's experiencing that?
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about affections, you're thinking about things like love or hatred or fear or joy, things like that. And one of the things that I think it produces in me is this sort of twofold peace and joy, if I'm receiving it properly, right? Because one is, I have a sense of peace knowing that God has a plan and he's ordering things like in my life actively. So even when like I don't have the answer and I don't know what the outcome is, or maybe I do know what the outcome is and it's going to hurt, I can begin to have peace about it because I know that God's taking me somewhere in it. And there is joy. Now, obviously, in the good, that's easy, right? Because it's not just an accident that happened. God gave me that for a purpose. But there's even joy in the sadness because God hasn't left me alone. He hasn't abandoned me. I'm not a victim of chaos. I am a participant in God's this play that He has put together for us. Yeah.
No, that's.
What about you? When you think about conviction and affection, what does this doctrine do in you?
I think trying to think of the word for it. I'm trying to think of like trust, right? Like but peace. I guess it gives me peace.
You're taking my word.
Oh, did I take your word?
Yeah, I said peace.
Oh, I wasn't listening to you because
Jim came in to get a cigar.
Yeah, old man Jim came in to get a cigar. And he was like standing right behind me, hovering, and so I really wasn't paying attention to you.
Yeah, no, peace. Yeah, so go with that, like trust, dependency, like whatever.
Exactly. So that in the midst of whatever circumstance, knowing that God is there. I think peace is what would be for me. I think the hardest part about this doctrine is the conduct, and I think for me, when I think of that word conduct and what I should be doing, I think what I should be doing is praying. Yeah, I should be praying and praising, and I think in that I struggle with in the midst of whatever's going on to praise God that he is infinitely good despite me not seeing the outcome.
Right. So like let's just go ahead and in a sense affirm what Sheldon Powers would say.
Stop.
What?
Stop.
What?
Dr. Flowers.
Dr. Flowers. He would say, like, hey, listen, if why do anything? Why care? Why pray against something if God is ordered all things, in your life? And listen, I'm not about to argue that people don't have that thought or that struggle. I certainly embrace this doctrine, and there is a temptation to say, like, well, it'll be what it'll be. Mm-hmm. Why bother praying?
It is what it is.
So yeah, I think that that is a temptation, but it is an abuse of the doctrine, and it's a misunderstanding of the doctrine. It's a grasping of a quarter of the doctrine, but not the whole thing. And so yeah, I think it ought to move us to, like you said, pray and praise God in the midst of all these things, but it also should encourage us to act our part, right? And by act, I don't mean pretend. I mean be active. Yes, God is providentially caring for me in my life, but I am responsible for my actions, and my actions have meaning and value and eternal significance because all of it is working out in accordance with God's plan. So I should want to be really involved at 100%, doing my best, giving my all to play my part in God's plan. And again, we're going to have to embrace the mystery of, well, it's God's plan, and He's providentially caring for all these things, and yet even experientially, I see that I am doing or I'm not doing, either way, but it's on me. Like I am acting out in accordance with my own nature, my own desires. So yeah, I definitely think that this might be the harder part of application is what should we do? But maybe we can start with what you said. You start by praying.
Because I'm basic. Continue. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you basic.
Basic.
And praising. And that will probably frame our minds and our hearts in such a way where we can begin to more confidently conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of God's glory, that reflect this doctrine. I don't know, man. I'd like to know. We're gonna link some resources for you guys, because we have Watson's. We have some stuff online you can read for free by Watson. We'll link to some books on the doctrine of providence that you can purchase. This is definitely. I'll tell you this. So I've had guys, non-Christians, who are walking through severe affliction. One guy in particular, a member of Redeemer now, when he was a non-Christian, he was dying. He was in the hospital. And I gave him Behind a Frowning Providence by Murray. I had him read All Things for Good by Watson. And God used the doctrine of providence as it's connected to the gospel in particular to bring this guy to faith. And ultimately, in God's mercy and kindness, He healed this brother, and he's alive and well today. But this doctrine is intensely practical. It needs to be experiential, or we're not really embracing all of it. We'd love to know what you're reading, your recommendations, and I'd like to know, like, how does the doctrine of providence give you confidence and conviction and lead you to conduct yourselves in a certain way? Like, there's ways that it's God's working in you that might be different from us. So I'd like to hear from them. How do they participate in the conversation, Jimmy?
Yeah, you can follow us online on Twitter and Instagram at @DocandDevo, or on Facebook /Doctrine and Devotion. You can head on the website, doctrinedevotion.com. There you can contact us. You can sign up for the email blast or hit up the store, jofostore.com, and grab some gear. In case you guys haven't bookmarked it yet, you're going to want to bookmark the1689confession.com. And Joe, if people want to follow the 1689 Confession online, where do they go?
Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. What's the?
There's like an Instagram thing.
Joe.
So if you go to Instagram,
Joey.com
/the 16.
You lost this like you lost your passport.
89. Is that it? Let's see. Nope, that ain't it. The 1689 Confession.
This is not going well.
I don't know this stuff.
Why don't you know?
You're the social media guy.
No, you handle that account.
Okay,
I don't.
Okay. You go to Instagram.com /the1689 Confession. You can follow us on there. Or on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't handle those accounts. So.
I think Twitter is just the1689 /the1689. There
Here
you
I
go.
was trying to help.
Man, I don't know that stuff.
You should know it.
Nah.
You should. You're in charge of those two accounts.
Yeah, you're a social media guy.
Not for those accounts.
Yeah, well, you're gonna be.
No, I got no access to those.
Oh, you're gonna have it.
No, I ain't doing any of that.
Yeah, so 1689 website is so good, designed by Brian Malcolm.
Beautiful.
It's the whole confession. It looks beautiful on your phone, on your tablet, on your desktop. Share that with people, man. Let people know. It's all free, all for you.
And now that everyone else checked out already, for those of you that stayed behind to the end, we're going to let you guys know something.
It's coming up.
Next week, we're revealing, we're going to be talking about Doc and Devo 19.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good. We're going to give all the details. We can give the dates right now. We can give them the dates. That's
Give them
fine.
the dates.
Give them the dates.
Save the date.
Save the dates?
Yeah, save the date.
Do you say that if it's not a wedding?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, hold on. It is.
This is a wedding between doctrine and devotion, yo.
I did not approve that terminology. It is May 3rd and 4th. May 3rd and 4th. We can't talk about anything else.
No, man. But like, you remember last year?
This is bigger.
It's going to be bigger. It'll be more.
Yeah. Well, maybe not better. Well,
it better every year. Of course.
It gets better every year.
Yeah.
You know, some people are coming back. Some new people are showing up.
Yeah.
We might have expanded certain things. It's a 2-day conference now. Well, it was a 2-day before, but I'm talking about like we've expanded.
Yeah. So there's going to be more than what you... So all the stuff that we offered last year, there's going to be that and more offerings.
And more. And our premier partner is amazing.
Premier partner. So we've got sponsors and a premier partner partnering with us to bring this to you and make it really, really good.
Oh, I can't wait to announce that.
Man, I can't wait. And Dan Brogan is coming back. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that.
Who?
Dan Brogan?
Dan Brogan? I have no idea what you're talking about. Fresh Pod every Monday and Thursday. Blog posts on Wednesdays. We're starting to get some video content on Fridays. Later.